The terrifying reality of Nancy's final moments completely shatters every single wild theory floating around the internet right now. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos dropped a rather intriguing clue during his most recent media appearance. He admitted detectives have secretly harbored a specific working hypothesis for quite some time now, yet he completely refused to elaborate further. Several weeks back, certain news reports suggested local law enforcement might be leaning toward one particular scenario. Whispers pointed heavily toward a botched home invasion, although authorities consistently declined to officially verify those rumors. Personally, I could never quite buy into that broken narrative, and suddenly we have major breaking developments. Nancy Guthrie's heart monitor transmitted its final data burst at 2:28 a.m. on February 1st. Exactly 8 minutes afterward, residential surveillance captured a vehicle 2.5 miles away, which perfectly aligns with a 6-minute drive. Law enforcement validated this timeline, yet 65 days later, we have 0 arrests while her driver remains absolutely silent. Furthermore, police recently disputed 4 massive media outlets regarding the suspect's potential prior visits to her house before the actual abduction. This investigation is not stalling, it is shattering entirely, and those jagged broken pieces conceal the real, horrifying story. We are examining the vehicle, its escape path, the official search zone, and crucial clues found half a mile beyond it, plus a hidden wire strongly suggesting a 2-person operation. Blood discovered on her front porch completely upends our entire previous understanding of those critical, missing 41 minutes. At 65 days of total quiet from the absolute last person to see her breathing in avoidance that psychological experts adamantly refuse to label as mourning. Thank you for joining me here tonight, and no matter where you are tuning in from, globally, please pause your day to send up an urgent prayer for Nancy. We believe the Almighty constantly watches over the darkest corners and answers united international petitions, so we beg the Creator to fiercely safeguard her. Direct the dedicated detectives on this crucial assignment and awaken heavy guilt in whoever hides the vital closure her beloved relatives so desperately need. Please return her safely because we refuse to quit hoping, so drop an amen below if you firmly share this unwavering faith tonight. Let us know your exact geographic location in the chat, as this incredible international group deeply knows that every single spiritual blessing truly counts. Leave your brilliant theories down below, since your incredibly sharp eyes might just be the key to cracking this mystery. Let us dive into the nitty-gritty, starting directly with the mystery vehicle that flips this entire narrative upside down. Elias and Danielle Stratoglou presently reside roughly 2.5 miles from her house, nestled in the Catalina foothills. Their property sits on Camino Royale, a quiet street perfectly bypassing all primary traffic lights, connecting her isolated community directly to the main highways. 12 different cars slowly drove past their doorbell lens from midnight until 6 a.m. on February 1st, including one crucial ride spotted at 2:36. Her heart implant shut down at 2:28 a.m., and reporter Liz Kreutz's test drive to that exact camera took precisely 6 minutes. The journalist purposely bypassed major crossroads, brilliantly mimicking the exact covert path a desperate midnight fugitive would naturally take to escape completely undetected. With the device suddenly failing at 2:28 and a cautious 6-minute getaway, the suspects should have passed by at 2:34, yet they arrived at 2:36, leaving a bizarre 2-minute gap. This slight delay perfectly aligns with an abductor briefly stopping at the corner to intensely check their mirrors, removing a disguise and verifying the coast was clear before speeding down Camino Royale away from the danger zone. Former New York detective Pat Broen meticulously analyzed the video, concluding the getaway car was a Kia Soul, a highly generic, silent, and easily overlooked compact SUV rather than a bulky truck. It is the perfect stealth ride, remaining completely invisible to nosy insomniacs peering out their dark windows during the dead of night. Choosing a Kia Soul brilliantly guarantees absolute urban camouflage for a highly secretive mission, especially while cruising down a subtle side street like Camino Royale. That quiet lane spills right onto East River Road, an alternative northern thoroughfare, offering 4 distinct getaway routes with wildly different outcomes. Heading south ultimately means a 60-mile sprint toward Rio Rico near the border, which baffled cops heavily focused on initially. They could have quickly gone west toward Marana north to Tommaso's old neighborhood in Oro Valley, or east directly into the deeply desolate, unpopulated desert terrain. Those vast empty ravines could hide remains indefinitely, though retired Lieutenant Michael Gould strongly suspects she is secretly buried somewhere within a tight 2 to 5 mile radius. That 2 to 5 mile window is key, considering the lens sat at 2.5 and the glove surfaced at exactly 2. The geographic net is rapidly tightening around this exact boundary, violently exposing a massive blunder within the initial police strategy. Federal agents foolishly limited their search grid to just 2 miles, completely missing that crucial camera lens situated half a mile beyond their imaginary wall. The family voluntarily offered their tape after seeing the broadcast, since 0 detectives had actually knocked on their front door. Without anyone ever officially requesting the video, that definitive, undeniable proof would have vanished into the digital void if they had simply missed the evening news. Multiple insiders intimately close to the case confessed to Brian Enton that officers made genuinely terrible snap assumptions right from the absolute jump. First responders wrongly assumed she simply walked away, treating it entirely like a confused missing hiker situation instead of a highly violent crime. This massive early mistake likely caused the hopelessly tiny search net, leaving a vital security camera completely ignored for exactly 26 days. By the 27th of February, the sheriff finally admitted they were actively looking at cars traveling much farther away from the original epicenter. It took 26 agonizing days after she vanished for officials to finally admit their search grid was completely botched. Lately, my mind keeps circling back to the sheer volume of wild speculation surrounding Nancy's disappearance. What really caught my attention was that final interview with Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. He hinted at a long-standing internal theory without actually dropping any specifics, following up on whispers from weeks prior regarding their main angle. Word on the street suggested investigators suspected a botched break-in, though nobody ever put that on the record. Honestly, that angle never made a bit of sense to me because what thief steals a television and decides to kidnap Nancy Guthrie along the way? If an intruder panicked during a home invasion, standard criminal instinct is to bolt out the door empty-handed, leaving the victim behind. Today's deep dive breaks down exactly why this reeks of a calculated kidnapping, rather than a random robbery, even though we are still somewhat in the dark here. Obviously, the exact details remain a mystery, but we are absolutely laying every single verified fact out on the table right now. You spent a solid year instructing the FBI on exactly how to run their internal investigations. Then you clocked 18 years working the streets as both a state trooper and a local detective. Hopefully that covers your resume, plus you just got back from Tucson, meaning you have boots on the ground insight into Nancy's situation. Let me just quickly jump in and clarify that my FBI gig involved internet tracking, not internal affairs. Claiming you investigate other cops paints a drastically different picture for the audience. So to all my fellow officers tuning in, I promise I was never a rat. But getting back to your recent trip to Tucson, that was 2 weeks back. Actually, my visit perfectly coincided with that massive law enforcement raid we chatted about off-air. The timeline was roughly 2 weeks into the entire ordeal while I was doing some coverage for a different broadcast outlet. Honestly, Brian, as you already know, getting out of the studio is the single most vital step in true investigative journalism. Armchair sleuthing simply doesn't cut it, and your boots-on-the-ground approach is exactly why competing networks keep citing your exclusives. You are right in the trenches digging up fresh leads because without feeling the local vibe or driving those exact streets, you miss critical context. Anyone who hasn't felt the harsh reality of that desert completely skews the narrative, which made physical presence totally non-negotiable. Showing up in person changes everything, like when you literally filmed yourself driving straight into Mexico just to prove how porous that border really is. Exactly seeing is believing out in that incredibly distinct environment, especially given the quirky layout of Nancy's subdivision. Let's kick things off with the sheriff's recent cryptic media appearance where he bragged about having a solid lead while absolutely refusing to elaborate. You have meticulously tracked this timeline from day one and physically walked the ground in Tucson yourself. Where does your gut lie right now amid all the chatter about a botched robbery, a targeted hit, or even some deranged stalker connection to Savannah Guthrie? What is your central premise here? Because my Substack readers know I firmly rely on working hypotheses instead of rigid theories. I make that specific distinction because veteran guys like you and me, Brian, have watched this exact trap spring shut countless times. In major investigations, casual theories slowly morph into absolute facts, ultimately becoming a completely unshakable media narrative. The ultimate cautionary tale was my time in Northern Virginia during the sniper attacks, right after 9/11, when the entire world was hunting a white box van. That assumption was dead wrong, since the killers were actually cruising in a blue Chevy Caprice, proving law enforcement desperately needs to stop treating initial guesses as gospel truth. Authorities love throwing that word around loosely, but I actually published an extensive newsletter breakdown detailing my personal hypothesis on this very topic. Drawing on a career full of kidnappings, break-ins, and murder scenes, Brian, this particular mess boils down to a strict either-or scenario. It is either a catastrophic home invasion or a premeditated strike, and if we buy the robbery angle, you have to ask what pushed a petty thief into full-blown abduction. Why would a burglar decide stealing a human being carried less risk than simply sprinting out the back door, a detail both of us are dying to figure out? Getting a look at the unfiltered crime scene photos would answer everything, especially the condition of her actual sleeping area. Signs of a brutal struggle versus a calmly discarded blanket completely rewrite the timeline, pointing heavily toward my ultimate conclusion on the matter. Eventually, I stopped sugarcoating reality and started dropping hard truths exactly like during that heated roundtable we did alongside Elizabeth Vargas. I looked straight at the camera and declared that we crossed the threshold from missing person to something far more sinister a long time ago. Nancy was an 84-year-old woman with severe heart issues facing a terrifying ambush in her own sanctuary at 2 o'clock in the morning. Blood spatter confirms a physical altercation regardless of officials quickly blaming her blood thinner medication for the mess. Medical excuses mean absolutely nothing when a senior citizen bleeds and vanishes into the night during a clearly devastating attack. While the community kept circulating thoughts and prayers for her safe return, I had to look at this through a completely clinical lens. True investigators cannot afford blind optimism because cracking these cases requires ruthlessly separating cold hard logic from raw emotional hope. As harsh as it sounds, calling this a victimless murder shifts the public mindset and completely redefines exactly what kind of evidence we need to hunt down. Get ready for a bombshell. Ex-intelligence operative Tracy Walter broke down the home security video spotting a distinct rod sticking straight out of the intruder's coat. It boils down to a two-way radio or a frequency blocker. Betting on the radio theory completely blows the lid off how meticulously this operation was orchestrated. Handheld transceivers keep conversations strictly local without bouncing off mobile arrays. They completely bypass wireless routers too. You won't find the massive tech trail a smartphone leaves behind. Assuming our guy was talking to an accomplice idling in a getaway ride close by waiting for the green light, relying on analog radio waves is essentially the only way to dodge those massive data sweeps federal authorities are pulling. The former spy laid it out perfectly. Having a transport car idling nearby changes everything if a partner was pulling strings in the shadows. Calling a partner over standard networks to coordinate a pickup is a rookie mistake you'd absolutely avoid. Now lay that tactical setup over our known series of events. You have a mastermind feeding inside intel regarding the victim's weekend habits, security blind spots, and access doors. Then you have the muscle actually breaching the threshold disguised on tape. Finally, a wheelman hiding down a quiet street like Camino Royale waiting for the ping. Right at 2:28 in the morning, her heart monitor goes dark. The transmission is sent. The ride rolls up to the extraction zone. By 2:36 in the morning, that vehicle is 2.5 miles down the road, flooring it. Betting on frequency blockers perfectly explains a smart lens dying before recording his full face. That tech disruption was entirely intentional. The crew engineered every phase to erase their tracks. Drop your thoughts below. First question. Federal intelligence veteran Tracy Walter spotted what looks exactly like a radio mast poking out of the assailant's coat, hinting at either a two-way device or a scrambler. Two-way radios guarantee zero mobile logs. It exposes an accomplice in a transport car coordinating without dropping cyber clues. How does this specific gadget alter your view on the tactical brilliance behind this hit? Reply below. Looking back at the Moscow College murders, the prime suspect powered down his device before heading out. He falsely assumed killing the connection would scrub his path entirely. His fatal flaw was ignoring the void. Detectives charted the empty space, proving his handset pinged before midnight, and woke up again past 4. That 3-hour block of dead air matched against mobile nodes along the highway gave prosecutors their entire sequence of events. The missing data literally convicted him. Cyberintelligence specialist Heather Barnhart, the exact analyst who ripped through those infamous campus logs, explained to national anchors that the tech shutdown happening here might unlock everything. Your pocket device silently watches your every single move. Should the intruder or their crew have powered down devices between midnight and 4 in the morning, on February 1st, those empty spaces are screaming at analysts right now. The real magic hiding in these records stretches beyond February 1st, pointing directly to whoever lurked around repeatedly. Federal agents flagged both January 11th and January 24th as massive red circles on their calendar. Spotting a handset that suddenly lost power across all 3 evenings in the Catalina foothills, directly matching the stalking timeline near the victim's property, completely eliminates the chance of random luck. That right there is a criminal fingerprint. Everyday citizens simply aren't killing their batteries at midnight and rebooting at sunrise exactly when someone happens to be scoping out a senior citizen's residence. The tech expert tossed out another massive clue, flying completely under the radar. An attacker's handset could have pinged the target's personal internet router without ever fully logging in just by walking close enough. Hidden internet registries might expose unfamiliar gadgets hovering near the property during those missions. Catching a phone linked to anyone in the suspect pool brushing against the victim's wireless signal on January 11th, January 24th, or February 1st means the smoking gun is sitting on a hard drive somewhere. Let's not forget the red stains splashed across the front steps and outside panels. Genetic testing proved it was hers, yet nothing spilled indoors. That specific geography isn't random, it literally maps the attack. A scuffle starting at the welcome mat means the homeowner likely unlatched the deadbolt herself. The face staring back might have been familiar, prompting her to step into the cold air, feeling completely secure. Women in their mid-80s simply refuse to answer knocks at 2 in the morning for random creeps wearing face coverings. They only turn that knob for a familiar friend or a messenger sent by a trusted contact. The visitor dropped the perfect password, saying things like, "Annie sent me," or "Tommaso requested a welfare check." That precise dialogue guarantees an 84-year-old in her pajamas unbolts the locks before dawn, all because the voice outside name drops her absolute tightest inner circle. Retired profiler Johnny Grussing suspects a deep-rooted vendetta, tracking perfectly with violence, exploding at the doorway instead of the living room. Furthermore, top network crime expert John Miller dropped a bombshell 1 month in that completely flips the script on how this tragedy unfolded. He stated, "No matter the initial objective, the wheels fell off this plot incredibly fast. We're looking at a hit that morphed mid-strike. The crew rolled up with one specific goal, only to pivot violently when the victim fought back at the front steps. And look at the crypto address. A total ghost town since day one. Nobody touched the federal bait money. A real kidnapping ring would have laundered those digital coins through offshore tumblers in 48 hours flat. That stagnant account is nothing but a cheap stage decoration. It acts purely as a fictional script drafted post-murder, desperately tricking detectives into chasing a fake cash grab. Once the Bureau leaked to that porch security clip, internet sleuths quickly noticed the masked figure shared a striking resemblance to Dominic Evans. He shreds guitars alongside Tommaso in local group Early Black, a physically fit schoolteacher sporting a beard living right in town. This suspect shares a stage, a zip code, and serious history with the exact driver who dropped the victim off right before her world went dark. Immediately after his name leaked, he gave an exclusive interview. He openly admitted sitting through a brutal 40-minute grilling with federal cops. Look, claiming you were tucked in bed with family when she vanished is a convenient alibi. The guy swears his identity was stolen by some phantom, but detectives never slapped cuffs on him or named him a target, yet he still ran his mouth. Meanwhile, Tommaso has stayed completely silent for 65 agonizing days. Over on morning television, Savannah Guthrie shared a terrifying thought with Hoda Kotb, terrified her massive celebrity status actually endangered her mom. The television anchor shared a heartbreaking message online, admitting the crushing guilt of potentially dragging danger right to her mother is completely destroying her. The guy actually played ball from the jump, letting cops search the estate and seize her car. Cameron boldly faced the cameras while Tommaso offered crickets. Criminal psychology explains this silence perfectly. Innocent relatives usually panic loudly on television, stumbling clumsily through interviews simply because they are desperate to help. Insiders closely tied to the probe spilled the tea, revealing that detectives are staring at a blank whiteboard with absolutely nobody on their radar. They believe the perpetrator is either riding pure dumb luck or possesses an unprecedented twisted brilliance. Look at the sheer contrast between spilling your guts and pleading the fifth. One believes transparency clears his name, while the other hired a slick lawyer who warned him that talking builds a prison cell. An anonymous whistleblower deeply embedded in the case leaked that the local sheriff's department completely dropped the ball from the exact moment the senior citizen vanished. The initial patrol units bizarrely assumed the elderly woman simply strolled off alone, treating the disaster like a lost hiker hunt instead of locking down a bloody crime scene. That terrible lightning-fast assumption basically cursed the entire police operation from day one. Investigators wore blinders, treating her disappearance as a tragic medical wandering event rather than hunting down a vicious predator. Worse, the commanding officer rolling up that fateful night had 0 murder investigations under his belt before taking charge. That same informant pointed out a massive red flag, noting how cops had to keep revisiting the property for evidence proving they completely botched the initial perimeter lockdown from the jump. When you have a forensics crew returning repeatedly to the exact same spot, it proves the baseline investigation was handled with absolute amateur tactics. The absolute breakdown of fundamental protocol right out of the gate, combined with brutally misidentifying the crime, plus failing to knock on enough doors and waiting 26 long days to widen the search grid, none of this nightmare happened by pure coincidence. This catastrophic failure went down in a precinct led by a rookie boss who never worked murders, while seasoned veterans were allegedly benched. The entire leadership chain was already crumbling apart long before the most high-profile abduction mystery in America ever crossed their cluttered desks. Fast forward to right now, and the beloved matriarch is still out there somewhere. Detectives are digging, but after 65 days, we have 0 handcuffs clicked and nobody officially targeted. Not to mention a precinct mole confirmed to the media that law enforcement is flying blind without a single valid suspect. The cracks in this nightmare run far deeper than missing clues. The actual agency trusted to bring this grandmother home is totally broken inside. Think about that mystery vehicle spotted at 2:36 in the morning, just outside the grid. A highly coordinated duo utilizing stealth tech hidden right in a coat. A complete cellular dark mode spanning 3 nights, deploying the exact ghosting tactics that ultimately jailed the Idaho killer. Sometimes total silence is the loudest clue. The crimson stains found at the doorway completely flipped the narrative, proving those extortion letters were a sick decoy. We are watching a task force that grossly misread a violent abduction as a casual stroll, and they have been desperately sprinting to catch up ever since. Then you have 65 days of total radio silence, From a guy whose psychological reaction to this intense heat simply does not match how an innocent person should act. This mystery is not hitting a brick wall, it is shattering into a million pieces. Yet the truth hides within those shards, while an 84-year-old woman who needs daily pills remains missing. Dial 1-800-CALL-FBI or visit tips.fbi.gov if you know anything. The family dropped a $1 million bounty plus $100,000 from the feds, totally anonymous. Drop an amen below for Nancy. Sound off in the replies and let me know what city you are tuning in from tonight. I am praying heaven protects you, your loved ones, and your elders every single day. The wheels on this hunt are turning incredibly fast right now, and the second a rock-solid update hits the wire, I will bring it straight to you. Subscribe immediately, because when this dam bursts, you do not want to hear about it 2 weeks late. In a world flooded with rumors, the deepest lesson is, this truth deserves patience and people deserve compassion. When fear rises, many rush to guest judge and turn pain into entertainment. But behind every headline is a real human life, a grieving family, and a community longing for answers. That is why we must learn to choose empathy over speculation, responsibility over noise, and truth over drama. This story reminds us that justice is not built on wild theories. It is built on careful facts, steady courage, and the refusal to give up when answers seem far away. Even when systems fail, even when confusion grows, human decency still matters. A neighbor sharing a video, an investigator staying committed, or strangers joining together in hope these small acts can carry enormous meaning. The educational value here is powerful. Be careful with your words because words can either wound or heal. In difficult moments, our role is not to spread panic, but to protect dignity. We should teach young people to think critically, verify information, and remember that every mystery involves real hearts, not just public curiosity. When darkness surrounds a situation, let us become people who bring light, more kindness, more wisdom, and more humanity.